So, guys, welcome back to another Coaching Family special of the My Personal Football Coach podcast. A new series we're doing on NextGen coaches, some of the best young coaches around that I've seen and identified. I'm going to invite them onto the show, but I was joined with my good friend Glenn Hicks. Glenn, how you doing?
Very well, mate. Looking forward to another part of the NextGen thing that you're doing.
Lovely. And today's special guest is Coach Matteo, Matteo Esposito. Mateo's like a big, massive following on Instagram. One of the best young coaches I've seen, and I think it's important to say to begin with, it's not just about his Instagram following, because look, we've got a lot of Instagram coaches. It's about the quality of the content he's producing. So, he shows a lot of his sessions, really good skill-based 1v1 ball mastery focused coach, and one of the best we've seen coming up. So I'm really excited to invite him onto the show and learn a bit about his story and understand what he's doing and the sort of players he works with a lot of top players in London, basically. So first of all, Coach Matteo, welcome to the show, mate.
Cheers. Thank you so much, Saul. And thank you, Glenn, as well. It's a pleasure to be here. So, absolute delighted to be here.
Give us a little background there, mate. Just tell us a bit about your journey so far in your coaching and playing journey so far.
Sure. So I've been coaching about 7-8 years now. Started coaching when I was 17. So that was something that I actually done alongside still pursuing a playing career by myself. Started within working in schools and doing PE and after school clubs and local grassroots stuff. And I guess as I've got closer to where I am now, being 24 years old, started to edge more into working with players who actually have a desire to pursue football as a career rather than just something that they enjoy doing and do for, I guess, general fitness. And obviously now, over the last year, been working in Arsenal's pre-academy with the eights, alongside obviously growing my own personal brand, which obviously you've mentioned already. So yeah, haven't been in it long, but definitely feel like the playing experience and the pursuit of becoming a footballer, which a lot of the kids are doing now, has definitely helped the coaching for sure.
Tell us about then your playing journey. How did that go? Then tell us a bit about that and then how that did affect your coaching.
Yeah, sure. So I obviously, like most kids nowadays, started quite early. Obviously didn't have access to the coaches that we have nowadays. But like any kid, wanted to become a footballer, and pretty much dedicated my life to that. Jumped in and around academies, but never was lucky enough to sign. Being honest with myself now, probably wasn't at the level and probably became good too late, where I feel like I wasn't ready for first team football. So I played a lot of semi-professional football. Actually was coached by yourself a long time ago, probably a decade ago now, believe it or not.
Where was that?
That was at Ammonia, so at one of my grassroots clubs.
Yeah, so, very well.
Yeah, fun fact. Well. But yeah, jumped around a few academies, went on trial at Palace, Brentford, Wimbledon, Watford, was just never quite at the level, to be fair. Got into men's football quite early, and that's when I decided to go into coaching. From quite young, a lot of my coaches would say, would you ever go into coaching? And I think at the time probably took offence to that, because I wanted to be a footballer. But it was probably just because of how much I would try to dictate and coach while I was playing and while I was training. So it sort of makes sense now how I found myself in this field. But yeah, that was sort of the playing experience, I think. And I think being such a technical player, that's probably why I've sort of dived into the technical field in regards to coaching as well.
So tell us about that, because that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, your sessions, I say content, but I mean your sessions generally stand out because, like I said, quality technical work, ball mastery, 1v1. We'll talk a little bit about how you construct the content after. But tell us how you went down that road. Tell us about your coaching methodology. How did you come up with this? Tell us a story about how you, because we're all different. We all see the game differently, and we put that onto the pitch. How do you come about that, and to this point now when you're coaching those types of sessions?
Yeah, I think like I said, I think being such a technical player myself when I was younger, it was always something I was so passionate about. I think the detail in different techniques and different moves, and whether that's ball striking or passing and receiving or skill combinations, was always something that I was so passionate about. I think it's probably what I lacked when I was younger in regards to having that ability to create overloads and dominate 1v1. I was probably what people would consider nowadays as a bit of a luxury, and I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't go as far as I felt I should have at that time. And I guess now it's just about dedicating my time into producing and helping players be the player that I wish I was. So I think that would be it in a nutshell. In regards to coaching philosophy, I think like I hear people like yourself speak about, master the ball, master the game, or dominate the ball, dominate the game. Obviously, our philosophy at Arsenal is, in a nutshell, master the ball so you can dominate possession. So when I hear terms like this, it was just something that always resonated with me. And I think ever since then, it's obviously just been something that's sort of been at the heart of my coaching, creating players who can, I guess, change games and produce those moments that create goals or chances. So very, very heavy with like you said, the 1v1 dominance and working against multiple lines of pressure and things like that. So definitely, I would say similar to yourself and something that I'm really passionate about for sure.
Tell us about that. I'm interested to know that in that journey you went on, because obviously everyone can excuse me, everyone can have that idea. Got lots of people, technical players, but then putting it into practice effectively on the pitch is a different kettle, isn't it? Really, I mean, being able to work the boys and the girls or whatever in technical sessions and creating those good quality technical sessions, you're going to get those outcomes is a different thing, isn't it? So tell us about that journey in terms of practically, how did you develop your coaching style and understanding, how to work groups and your session design? That's a big thing as well, isn't it? So tell us a bit about that, because that's what really interests me a lot. I talk to these coaches, these coaches like yourselves who put on these good sessions. Where did it come from? Because I know you're not going to tell me it came from working and doing any of the FA courses, because they're not really constructed to do that sort of thing, are they?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think personally, when I look at how I was coached growing up, it probably was the complete opposite to how I coach now. So I think that in itself probably birthed the foundation of what I do. I think knowing skill combinations and having a passion for it is one thing, but like you said, being able to create session designs that are actually going to develop that side of the game. I think one thing that I've learned over the last year or so is that every single part of a session has purpose. So you never plan something just for the sake of doing it. It has purpose. And for me, I think it's been a journey for sure. I think I've had the privilege of obviously having close friends in the game as well. People like Harry over at Football Kings, who obviously is a really good friend of mine. And we're always bouncing ideas off each other as well and challenging each other. So that's helped massively. Obviously, people like yourself, Alex, obviously Glenn as well. People who are probably from a different generation to me, helping and I guess leading the way and seeing what those guys are doing. But in regards to putting my own twist in it, I think I've always enjoyed watching technical players, studying what they're doing, and then really trying to put it into practices that happen in game and moves that happen in game in a way that obviously is enjoyable for the kids, but more than that is actually going to help them and is going to be able, the things they're going to be able to actually transfer over into a game as well.
Interesting. Glenn, anything you want to?
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying listening, mate, to be honest, because it's one of them things, isn't it? The older we get, Saul, the further we get away from the playground and the further we get away from being able to move. I was just having a chat with a colleague of ours that we know well, so I was just talking about a minute ago, about when I look back at when I was coaching at 21, 22, 23, 24, maybe early 20s, I couldn't do physically the demands of what I was doing at the time. The amount of demos we've done and now our hips have gone, so the amount of step overs and whatever else. And I actually think it's one of the biggest things that's changed in football is it's a good thing that there's more one-to-one coaches than ever. But it's like anything, isn't it? Like you said, when it's, because we've got a lot of experience, we can watch Matteo or anybody's practice for 5 minutes and we would make a really informed decision on whether or not we would pay for our son or daughter to go to that session. Do you know what I mean? And it's like anything. There's been a massive explosion of these one-to-one coaches, but we've got to be careful that if it's done right, then of course it will really accelerate their learning and all the outcomes that we want with being 1v1 brave. Because the one thing I would say, the reason I encourage it is because I don't think it's getting coached enough, and we've spoke about this a lot, so won't we? It's not, this stuff is not getting coached enough at clubs as part of clubs' philosophies, and there is a gap. But we've got to be careful that we know there's cowboys and charlatans out there that will be coaching incorrect habits or and some not so helpful stuff into them. Do you know what I mean? I'm just intrigued to listen as well.
Yeah, I mean that's also the other point, isn't it? Because like we said, earlier, it's a saturated market out there. There's every man is dog these days is a one-to-one coach or small group coach. So it's a very difficult market, and it's very difficult to stand out. But I mean, it's just it's interesting that if you're doing good work, and you're good at what you do, the cream always rises to the top, really, isn't it? It's interesting that. So, but tell us a little bit about then. I mean, considering that, I mean, you've got a really successful business now. Coach Matteo, that we run your private academy. Tell us about starting that up then, and what were the challenges about becoming a small business owner, going out on your by yourself and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think me deciding to step away from football definitely helped. I think for a long time I didn't want to be a business owner. I didn't want to do my own thing because of the pressures and the responsibilities that come with that. It isn't just going on pitch and delivering. It's so much more than that. It's being able to actually build foundations to be able to sustain over time. It's admin, it's content. It's a full-time job doing the off the pitch stuff as it is, let alone being able to plan and deliver effective sessions as well. So for me, when I was playing, which was only up until a year ago, I was okay working for other people, and I think it got to a stage where I'd realised I'd probably hit a ceiling, coaching wise, and had a decision to make on whether to really double down and go into the coaching world at 24, which is obviously quite young, or whether to try and pursue a career which on paper wasn't really going anywhere, and then probably end up making this decision at 30, 31, where there probably would have been even more coaches than there are today. So I think that was the first move, making that decision and coming to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to be a footballer, and that I was going to dedicate my life to helping the future generation of players with coaching, which is quite rare nowadays. Like you said, there's probably a handful of coaches out there who I think deliver that technical level of detail. I think it's easy, like you said, just to chuck sessions on and do things that are going to look good on Instagram, but there's actually underlying principles that these players, depending on where they're at and how old they are and what phase they're in, need. So that was sort of the first thing for me. And then the last year, to be fair, has just been a constant learning process for me. It seems like obviously it's come off the ground quick, and it has, but it's been years of dedicating my life to becoming, I guess, the best I can be, which was as a player and now as a coach. So things have grown really, really quick. I decided that I wanted to work in a particular niche, and I've tried my best, and I've made a promise to myself that for the time being I won't compromise that, and I think that's helped as well, because elite players don't make a session elite, but when you have really, really good players in a session that can stretch themselves, and then you add coaching on top of that, which obviously helps them and makes them better, and I feel like development's inevitable in an environment like that. And ultimately that's attracted more and more players who want to come in that environment. And I think that's obviously helped massively as well. So I think that, the combination of having players who are considered, elite for their age and, working in and around academies or pre-academies, whatever it might be, on top of obviously a level of coaching that can help them. I think that combination has obviously led to what I am or what CBM is today.
What would you say the main challenges have been to creating your own business and making that successful?
I think the biggest challenge is obviously uncertainty, right? Like every time you're going into a season of uncertainty, yes, there's a chance it's going to work, but there's also a chance it's not. And even now, like I'm only a year in, there's people that have had a really good first year, and then, by year 2, 3, 4, 5, the business doesn't exist anymore. So I think that's the biggest challenge. I think making sure that you're constantly getting better as well as the challenge in itself. I think as much as we expect the kids to continue to get better and not stay stagnant, I think it's the same as coaches as well, because the better that I can be, the better the kids can get. And I'd probably say the criticism as well, like social media is a world now that can transform your life and your business 100-fold, but also it comes with, the other side of it, which is the hate, the comments, the indirects, and, you see it at the highest level, even, players, right? 1 minute that, they score a goal and they're the best thing ever, and the next minute, they're being told that they're rubbish and, they don't deserve to play for that club. So I think if you want a platform in today's day and age, you have to have thick skin. And I guess that challenge of, receiving that, I wouldn't even call it constructive criticism, I'd probably just call it criticism. It develops thick skin, and ultimately I just try to see the silver lining in that and see how I can actually make my service better through some of the things, that I hear, alongside obviously trying to stay, focused and tunnel visioned and things like that.
What about then? Just about that, you sort of mentioned you've been working with under-8s at Arsenal. Had that opportunity come about, and then tell us what the main advantages working for a massive club in the academy like that.
Yeah. So when I decided that I wanted to become I always wanted or had a desire to go into academy football, but between playing, private coaching, and working within an academy, I knew that one of those three would have to budge. So as soon as I decided to stop playing, obviously made a phone call to a friend of mine and just said, look, I'd love to get into academy football. You know, is there anyone you can put me in contact with? And managed to obviously have an interview at Arsenal, done my trial session. Typically, you normally go into a development centre first and then sort of work your way up. But I think they just really liked what they heard and what they saw in the trial session. And I just went straight into the under eights, which has been amazing. I've absolutely loved it. I know it's cliche, but it really doesn't feel like work. And in regards to the benefits of it, I think, of course, you get to put a badge to your name. And to a lot of people, they'll think that's the only benefit. But for me, it's probably more than that. It's me constantly getting better because there's so many great coaches at the club within our age group, but also, you're sticking around after training, you're watching the 9s, the 10s, the 11s. Sometimes you're coming in on days off to watch some of the YDP ages as well. And some of the coaches there who have obviously got a really different style to me, and it's interesting to see that side of it. But also, people like, the Danny Bucks, to the technical coaches working with the older age groups and seeing what they're doing. What does it look like at under eights? I kind of got an understanding of that now, but what does it actually look like at under 15? So I think that's probably the biggest perk, is that you're constantly able to refine and develop and be challenged, because obviously when you're running your own business and it's only you're not really learning off anyone. Of course, it's a showroom as well. Like, I think that goes without saying. You're delivering a service, and there's players who want to do more. I hear you say a lot that the best do more, and I think that starts at the youngest of age groups. And I think nowadays a lot of players outside of their academy commitments are doing more, whether that's groups, one-to-one, small groups, camps, whatever it might be. And obviously when you're coaching in a club and they're getting to see that, more often than not, if they want more, it's probably going to be you that they come to. Obviously it's not always the case, but it has been for me, fortunately enough, for myself.
Interesting. Glenn, anything on that?
Yeah, it's interesting how the landscape's changed. There's these entrepreneurial spirits, the young entrepreneurial spirits like Matteo and stuff, and they've grown in a different world to us. Because I think, let alone having Instagram on my phone, I think the phone I had was like a Nokia 3210 or something with Snake, and there was no YouTube and Instagram and whatever else. Yeah. So listen, I'm showing my age a little bit. I'm only 41, but it's interesting the balance between being business minded, because you're forging a career for yourself, and there's a lot of young people that, of course, all of us here, I can clearly hear it in Matteo as well, that our number one passion is playing of the game, first and foremost, and then it's teaching the game or coaching the game, whatever you want to construct it. And there's got to be that balance between developing yourself as a player developer, a proper player and people developer, and where players are at the centre of all of it. But, because football gets bashed over the head, these one-to-one coaches like yourselves, about paying to play and this and that. And of course, it's not going to be accessible for everyone for obvious socio and economic reasons, but like you would pay for your children to go and get extra tuition with language or English or maths, it is what it is, and you're providing a good service. But I'm more interested with that side of it, in terms of balancing off the business and your professional side of making an income, because everyone needs an income, and doing the right things to develop yourself. Like, you've gone and used your initiative to get yourself into Arsenal, and at the end of the day, at any Premier League club, Saul knows, he's worked at 3 of the top ones in the country. If you're not good enough, you won't get the opportunity. So it's one thing someone getting you the opportunity in there, but then to take it and then actually stay there and hopefully you'll flourish the next 5 to 7 years is it's a mark of your quality, really. Because as Saul knows, and you'll know now, and you're learning that it's an incredibly competitive industry. So it's a mark of your competence that you've got in the door at the club you have as well.
I think also Matteo made a great point there. I mean, I talk about a lot. Like Glenn said, working at the clubs I worked at, is that, like you say, you're just surrounded by world-class practitioners and the opportunity to learn. I remember my early days at Tottenham, going in there, like I said, mentioned working with Bucky, just all these, Alex Inglethorpe, John McDermott, Chris Ramsey, these guys are some of the best player developers in world football. These are unbelievable. So that's such a massive advantage, because, you obviously got the tools, you've got methodology, but as you know, Matteo, like, working in academy football is different kettle. It's different, isn't it? It's different compared to grass football. Even if you work, you're working because you've almost replicated that. You've got all the good players. But as you know, all those experiences going to schools and doing his lunchtime, which are really important, and they help you get to help. And that's why I started as well. And Glenn, we'd worked in the foundation at Tottenham. but working at academy level, those those ones day in day out is different, isn't it? And the intensity and the demands, and it's great, and that's for me. I always say that's the big show. That's it. That's if you do it there, that's the level, and it's great experiences. But also, like I say, it really develops you. What would you say, Matteo? Have you got aspirations to work more in academy football? I know it's different now, obviously, because you've got a very successful business. How do you weigh those options of sort of things up for yourself?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think obviously if we go back, 5, 6, 7 years, it was a little bit different. I think it was almost like you go into academy football, you learn your craft, you refine your craft, you become an expert in that field, and then it's like, right, actually, I'm going to go into the private business, and sort of go against the grain. And there's so many factors to it. Obviously, the financial side of it is a massive one, but also it's that freedom of being able to take something which was just an idea or thought wherever you want it to go. I think obviously for myself, it's sort of been the opposite, where I've started a private business. Obviously, was working with a lot of the boys that were in and around the pre-academy circuit anyway, have then been given an opportunity to go in, and now we're sort of side by side. I think it's hard because obviously there's only so many days in a week. Even working at pre-academy is a 3-day commitment. Me moving up one age group would change that to a 4 and sometimes even 5-day commitment, which obviously takes days away from, the private stuff. So it's really, really difficult. I think for me, the biggest thing is I never want to get to a point where I feel like I've hit a ceiling coaching wise. And I know that there's only so much that you can learn when working in the pre-academy. And eventually I'm going to want to be stretched more. And that might be, working in the foundation phase. It might be working, in the YDP phase as well. What I actually got brought into the pre-academy to do originally was the IDP work, the individual development plan work, and work with individuals and small groups, whether that was 2-to-1s, 3-to-1s, specifically on areas of their game that not only the club felt they needed to work on, but also that the players wanted to work on, because ultimately it's their career. So it was almost coming in as a technical coach in a sense. And I think after about 2 or 3 weeks of leading the technical parts of the practice, they just realised that it was my strongest area, and probably the area that I was strongest in out of the team that we had. And I've been leading it ever since. So, it might be me working within the academy, but working specifically on the IDPs and the technical work and things like that. Being completely honest, I don't know what it looks like. I've got real aspirations of progressing through the academy at the club and within the academy, but also with obviously growing the business. So it's a really, really difficult one because, like I said, it's almost impossible to do both. It almost seems like there has to be a small compromise on one side. At the minute, I'm absolutely loving life in the pre-academy, and I feel like I'm developing week by week and year by year. This is my second year now, and the fire's still there. I still feel like I'm learning. I still feel like I'm growing, and have the privilege of working alongside some amazing coaches. Obviously, when you're in the pre-academy as well, you get to go up with the 9s once a month as well. So I get the privilege of working with those coaches as well and seeing what that looks like when it's, an extra day a week, and obviously, games program as well, and futsal and all that stuff. So I still feel like the challenge is there. So for the time being, I'm really, really happy, and I feel like I'm getting a good amount of challenge. But who knows, maybe as the years go by and I continue to develop as a coach, there might be a new age that I want to go into, or a new phase that I want to go into. So yeah, I'm excited to see what that looks like. I've got no idea what that looks like. But for sure, we would love to stay within academy football, 100%.
Tell us about then, give us an idea what your typical session would look like putting on at one of your sessions.
Yeah, so typically our sessions are, depending on what they are, they'll either be an hour 15 if it's just a weekly group, or 2 hours if it's what we call our master classes. Typically we would start with juggling, loads of different surfaces, different challenges, something that obviously stimulates the boys, alongside obviously them becoming more technically excellent. And then you've got the physical demands of it as well, in regards to building mobility and flexibility in hips and groins and ankles. If it's a longer session, we typically start with like arrival games, just because I think it's a great way to start the session. People are turning up late and they go straight in, whether that's 1v1 and then another player turns up and it's a 2v1, and now you're working underloaded and overloaded, and if another 2 turn up, then it's 3v2. And I think just off that first 15-minute period alone, they get so much out of that, because there's so many duels, overloads, underloads, ball striking, combination work. So that's typically how we start. It'll be one of those two. Obviously, ball mastery and skill combination is a massive part of what we do. And that more often than not will be skill combinations. But even within ball mastery, we look at different passing techniques, different receiving techniques, different ball striking techniques. Because I think there's probably a misconception on what ball mastery is. A lot of people think it's just the ball manipulation, it's just the twists, it's the turns, but really it's your linking actions, your ball striking, your passing, your receiving, whether it's reverse passing, outside of the boot passing, aerial control. So we try to be really, really creative with what that looks like. And then obviously, a massive part of the session is 1v1s, working different pressures. More often than not, we'll look at trying to reverse engineer the session. So if we're working pressure from behind within our 1v1 practices, then we'll try and work a skill combination or a pattern that would work on those skills that they can then transfer into the practice. And to be fair, we've been doing a lot of like multiple lines of pressure now. Obviously, the boys are very, very dominant 1v1 now. So it's not about challenging them, 1v2, recovery defenders, pressures from different directions. And then we normally finish sessions with just small-sided games. Again, like 2v2 games, 3v3 games. Sometimes we'll go 5v5 games. And even something that I've been doing a lot recently as well, which I actually took from one of the nines coaches at Arsenal, is like a technical finisher. So when they're fatigued and they're a little bit tired, finishing with technical work as well if you've got the time, whether that's going back into juggling, whether that's, skill combinations again, whether that's, passing and receiving, hitting reverse passes and things like that. Just because I think it's not easy, but it's easier to do it when you're fresh. But I think the challenge then comes when you're under fatigue, you still have that same quality. So that's just a challenge in itself for the boys. And again, more than what that looks like technically and physically, I think it's the mental challenge as well. Naturally the game's finished and the session comes to an end and they sort of stop. But when you give them that extra 10-15 minute blast, it just shows the mentality really, which is a massive part of being a footballer as well. Probably just as important as the technique and the 1v1 dominance and all that stuff.
Interesting. And tell us a bit about then your Instagram or your socials, your TikTok and stuff like that. Obviously, you're doing very well on it. 150k plus in that just a year or whatever it is, mate. So just tell us a bit about then how you tell us about you talked about your coaching game, because your socials game. Then how do you stay on top of that, and tell us how hard that is to stay on top of.
Yeah, for me, I've always loved doing things myself. So I run the social media. I have my brother actually who helps with the recording of the content, and I now have another friend that helps with that as well. But in regards to the editing of the videos, and obviously the managing of the accounts, that's done myself. So like I said earlier, it is a job in itself for sure. And numerous hours go into that, and numerous hours lost when I probably should be sleeping, creating reels and creating bits and pieces. I've always been really creative and passionate about that stuff. Even when I was playing, like I always wanted to have an Instagram account for something. I didn't know what, but I think the pursuit of growing something and dedicating something and knowing that if you put the work in, you're going to reap the rewards. And if you're consistent, you're going to reap the rewards. I think the playing game is probably one of the only industries that you can work hard and, put the work in and still not see the rewards that you hope for. So it's been a breath of fresh air in that sense in regards to content. But yeah, look, it's been a learning curve. If I'd love to sit here and say, it's all been strategized and, content's produced weeks in advance, but it's not. There was never really a plan. I just enjoyed, producing content. Obviously, yes, it can change your business and it can attract players, but more than anything, it just showcases what you do. I don't think there's a business out there in 2024 who doesn't have Instagram, and if they do, that has it because they want to promote their business, right? And for us as well, promote what we're doing and how good the kids are, and the development and the impact that we're having on them. So it's been a journey. Ultimately, the trends and things like that are always changing. So you're constantly pivoting and trying to keep up with that dangerous word that we call the algorithm that can just drive you insane. But yeah, look, it's growing quick. And for me, I think the biggest thing is if something's working, don't change it. My brother's always on to me about, diversifying the content and things like that. And for sure, I want to do that. You want to be a trailblazer. You want to set new trends. You want to, delve into new things and new ideas. But also, I think if something's working, you want to keep pushing that and be consistent with it. So
interesting. And so tell us about then, what advice would you give to a young coach who wants to start up himself and get into academy football and get his own business and be a success like you've been?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is ask yourself if it is actually something that you genuinely have a passion for. I think people will look at what's happened over the last year and they'll think that there was a plan in place, but just being completely honest, there wasn't. I just had this burning desire to help players and to coach and to deliver and learn and grow. And obviously what's happened over the last year has been a byproduct of that. So I think, have that genuine passion for the game and about developing players for sure. And also never become stagnant, never, feel like you've hit a ceiling, you're at a level where you can cruise, continuously, be in a pursuit of getting better and learn off other people. I think, you know, it's such a competitive industry, the industry of football as players, but also as coaches, and I think as coaches, we have a duty on helping other coaches as well, because ultimately if player development is what we care about, helping other coaches get better, ticks that box. If other coaches get better, then more players get better. Of course, it's a competitive game and it's business and it's cutthroat, and I get that. But I think, a lot of, I wish I had the help when I was younger, and fortunately enough, I did. I mentioned people like Harry King from Football Kings. He's only, 3-4 years older than me, but he was one of the reasons why I actually decided to step out and go and start a business. And I think more than anything, dedicate yourself to it. Like anything, you've got to be all in. I look back and think, if I was still playing, would I be all in with what I'm doing? Probably not. And even there was like an overlapping period where I was playing and I was still running the business. And in the middle of the games, I was just thinking about session plans and, what needs to be done. And I need to, get this insurance sorted, and I need to create this logo. And my mind was already on coaching. So I think really if your attention's split, it's going to be really, really difficult. So I guess you've got to be all in with it and really go full throttle with it. If you really, really want to be successful for it, and I guess become borderline. I don't like using the word obsessed, because I know there's more to life than coaching and work and business and football. But I guess borderline. You've got to have that little bit of obsession with being better and growing and being the best even. So I guess that would be my advice. It's the $1 million question, isn't it? But I guess in a nutshell, that would probably be my advice to a young coach for sure.
Well, Glenn, anything you want to add on this?
No, it's just nice to hear such passion, dedication, and the whole Instagram world is. You know me, so I'm useless with technology. I'm not old. I'm not setting my ways.
When you're having a fight with a microphone most of the time.
Yeah, I know. And but with a wife and 2 kids, whatever, it's like, well, find the time alongside 2 other jobs as well. But what I would say is, this whole Instagram world is the equivalent of like the Yellow Pages years ago, or like I remember, like music nights. People used to have to go and put flyers out everywhere. It's just, I find it fascinating, Matteo, how you're developing different skill sets as well, because being a content creator and putting videos together is a skill set in itself, and then running a business and managing the finances of a business and time and whatever else, and then the stuff that you love, your passion that you're driven by, teaching kids how to play football correctly, teaching kids how to grow as young people and become a player developer and a people developer. It's hard work. It's hard work, and the biggest message you've give there to any young coach, whether you're doing more team stuff or you're employed by a football club or whatever, is the number one fuel is your passion. You can hear your passion and dedication, and the fact that you're using words like obsessed. Saul will know, whether you're running your business like Saul, when Saul was an academy coach at Chelsea, Spurs, and wherever else, and Arsenal. You have to be obsessed to, like you say, not just get the best out of yourself. It's a really good message you've given, but to get the best out of the players you're working with. And it's one thing taking a group of young, aspiring elite athletes, because they're not elite yet really, they're young kids, but at a high level, are graded as some of the best in the country. But the mark of a coach is, where did you take them to? And you'll know yourself working with them. People think, if you've got a kid who comes in at a very low level and you're working a recreational session, it's very, very easy to improve them players, because it's a blank canvas and there's not much there. But if you get a kid who's looked as one of the best, and I think my wife could put a session together and just say, look, just put this together and organise it, and they'll set it on fire because they're that good. But it's about that adding something.
100%.
What do you know what I mean? What are we adding? And that's where the obsession has to come from, because the best players cause you the biggest headaches. Because oh my God, they should provoke a bit of insecurity out of us as coaches. Because did I stress them enough? Did I challenge them enough? What's next for that new like he's finding the 1v1 stuff too easy, or he's just rolling out the pressure behind him every single time, and that in itself is a challenge. And unless people have worked with the best players in terms of competence, they don't feel that or see that. So yeah, you got a lot of pressures on you, and you sound like you're doing very, very well. So yeah, keep up the good work.
I think like you said, I think it's so interesting that you say that, because I think for a lot of people, they think working with the best players is easy, and working with players that are blank canvas is hard, because you're starting from scratch and you're having to be patient with them and develop foundations and things like that. I think not everyone has the level of experience or detail to actually make the best players better. I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Because, and to be honest with you, it's challenged me at times. There's some players that walk through the door and they just set it alight, right foot, left foot. And again, it challenges you as a coach, because like, how do I continue to challenge this person? And, what details can I give to this player to help them get better, from their technical execution to actually making practices harder, whether it's, multiple lines of pressure, whether it's increasing or decreasing distances, so they've actually got less time to deal with the football. I think the bottom line is, at the highest level, if you can't deal with the football under pressure, then you're going to struggle. And the higher you go, the more pressure you're under in regards to the off-the-pitch stuff and fans and stuff, but also on the pitch, and how quick people are pressuring you and how quickly you need to make decisions. You're talking about half a second, and it's incredible what some of the kids are doing nowadays. But also, I think it's easy to make a session look good, like on social media, because they're doing really good things. But also, when you strip all that back, what it comes down to is the service that you're offering and the message that you're delivering. I think a lot of people see my social media and they think that's all it is. But if you actually come to a session, I get it a lot from the parents, to be fair, and some other coaches that come in and have helped out and things like that. That when you're actually here, it is different. The amount of detail that goes into it. The delivery, the coaching cues. Even like depending on what age you're working with, the same detail might be given, but you might have to package it up in a completely different coaching cue because of the age that they're at, or if there's a certain output you want to get out of the session. There might be one way to do that with an under 7s group, but then when you're doing it with an under 13s group, it's completely different. So that in itself has been a challenge. But I think ultimately, like you said, you just have to keep them. It sounds cliche and it sounds cringy, but you just have to keep the main thing, which is the hunger and desire to produce players and like you said, more importantly, people. So I'm really glad that you picked up on that, because I think a lot of people think it's so easy to work with good players, and I think it's not about who you get through the door. It's actually about who you can get better, whether that's from a beginner to a grassroots player, or one of the best players in the country, trying to make him better, and what that looks like. So I think that's our job as coaches, right? A player walks through the door and a player leaves at some point. You have to have added value to that person, whether they walked through as one of the best kids out there, or whether they walked through having no idea of how to kick a ball.
Yeah, I've got a strap line at the minute, Saul. Sorry, mate. Sorry to interject, Saul. I must have read something. One of the basketball coaches, whether it was Jackson or Phil Jackson or Wooden or someone, it just said something really simple: meet the players where they are. He said, I got to a certain point in coaching and meeting the players where they are. And what he meant is, I'll look at the player, where are they emotionally, psychologically, physically, on a practical level? What's their dribbling like in basketball? What's their dribbling like in football? What's their physicality? Do they need? So he look at all of them and meet them where they are. And that's our first job as coaches. Where are they? Is little Joey one of the best in the country, but he's a bit miserable at the minute because mum and dad have just got divorced. And again, the things we have to consider. So your job that night, Matteo, or me or Saul, might be, let's just put a smile on little Joey's face tonight, because that's what we need to do. He needs to enjoy his football, no pressure on. He's got to execute this, got to execute that. And then with the players, with a similar kind of strap line as well, is focus where your feet are. And if where your feet are is, if your feet are tripping over the ball, can't quite do a step over, well, let's just nail that first. Don't try and go on to the next bit and your croquetas and your Ronaldo chops and whatever. And in terms of where you are as well, do you know what I mean? If your feet as a young player are at Matteo's session, throw yourself into that. If your feet are at North London Rovers or Rangers or whatever, focus on your team stuff. And I think that's a good starting point for everyone, really, just them strap lines in terms of meet the players where they are and the players focusing where they are, where their feet are at that moment in time. I think that would be the starting point.
Great one. And also just going back to what we talked about before, also like starting your own business is difficult. Being a small business owner, an entrepreneur, it's not easy. It's very, it's 24/7. It's a difficult gig. You've got to be brave to be able to do it and to do it well as well. So well done. But also, when you talk about that Instagram, it's true. It's that it's not just about the content. It's like you said, and like I said when I first saw your work, and you mentioned Harry as well. Harry from King's Coaching is also going to be on Mondays as well. When I first saw him, it's like you look at it, you think, well, it is your walking, CV. It's your portfolio, isn't it? It's not just about contributing, about showing your methodology, and that's what helps you stand out. And that's what's really powerful about it. Because like myself and Glenn, we can see that and see what you're doing. Say, this is good. This is really unique. He's doing things like the right way, inverted commas, where we do things. So it's a really powerful tool, and it's really it helps get your brand across, but also your coach methodology, which is really powerful. But listen, look, we've gone well over, mate. We've kept you guys too long. I'm sure you've got to go and do a reel or something, not something together for tomorrow. Glenn, I don't know what are you doing tonight. Just like a
nice relaxing night, mate.
Yeah.
I've got me dinner. I've got tacos. Exactly. I've got Mexican tonight.
Yeah. But listen, so Coach Matteo, just tell everybody where they can find you on socials and stuff like that. Want to find out more about you.
Yes, so it's just at Coached by Matteo, and that's on Instagram and TikTok.
Fantastic, superb. I'll put it in the description as well as well. But check it out as well. It's really good. You're a coach as well. You're interested in coaching, or you want to get your coach kid, check it out. But in terms of the quality of his sessions, is really, really good. So look, thanks very much for joining us, Matteo. Really interested to hear your story. Wish you great luck. I'm sure you're going to go as far as you want to go in the game. And good luck, mate. And we'll see you soon.
Cheers. Thank you so much for having me, guys. All the best.
Well done. Keep it up.